What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the Dream Nation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. What's up, Dream Builder? We are back again with another episode where, I'm always excited, but I'm excited because I get to talk to such phenomenal people and I get the opportunity to be able to learn just like you. And so without further ado, please help me in welcoming my friend, Mr. Michael Blank, to the show. Michael, you want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
Hey, what's going on, Dream Nation? Let's do this.
Let's do it. Hey, so the way that I always start off the episodes is I always like to compare us as entrepreneurs, thought leaders, change makers to superheroes. And the reason being is because we're flying around the world, whether that means literally hopping on planes or even virtually now. We're inside of people's living rooms and inside of their ears and their minds. We're putting on our cape and we're trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And so I know that that's something that you've been doing specifically through teaching people about financial freedom. But one of the things that I always like to ask is, who's the man behind the scenes? And when I say that, I mean, a lot of the times when I'm comparing us to superheroes, if you think of Superman, you know who Superman is. But a lot of the times you maybe can't describe who is the guy behind the cape. Who is that Clark Kent? So I want to ask you the question. Let's take it all the way back before we get into the meat and potatoes of how to become financially free through real estate. Tell us, when there's no cape on, who is that Clark Kent for Michael Blank?
Yeah, it was, I read that awful purple book in 2005, I think. That's kind of where the story starts a little bit. And, like so many people watching or listening to this, they're in a similar situation to have some kind of job and they can't see themselves working another 20 years. And then you read that dumb book and it plants a bunch of seeds in your brain, but it doesn't tell you the exact strategy. It mentions things like cash flow business and real estate, but it doesn't tell you how to actually get there. But when I read that book...
When we talk about the purple book, we're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
There's only one horrible purple book and it's got to be that one.
Just for anybody just first taking a look at it.
And so at the time I was working for a software company. And, like so many people, whatever their W-2 job is, and I read that book and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. It doesn't matter what my salary is or what I had. And I had a bunch of money from the IPO in this company that I joined in the late 90s. And I was like, man, I gotta change my life, And so like 6 months later, I walk home and I said, hey, honey, I quit my job. She goes, you did what? Shouldn't you maybe talk about this first?
Right.
And so my mission literally became financial freedom, right? And there's two ways to do it: cash flow business and real estate. So I did the next best thing. I got into a pizza franchise. I mean, wouldn't you do the same, Casanova, right? I mean, you do the same thing. Well, that's what I did.
I love pizza.
And I flipped a couple houses. I took a seminar here, and I just embraced it. I'm a natural learner, and I embraced it. And I'll make a long story very short. I subsequently lost my IPO millions in the restaurant experiment. I lost all my money. I was luckily able to get $200,000 in unsecured debt before the recession, which I was able to leverage to get myself out without getting sued, because I had like 8 restaurants at the time, and it was a nightmare. I almost lost my house, and then I clawed my way out of real estate because I remember the other part of it was real estate. So I started to flip houses, obviously, and so I was successful flipping houses. We flipped like 3 dozen houses, and making money. And losing money on the restaurants while it's going. I'm trying to extricate myself out of the restaurant. So I'm working like 80 hours a week, literally making absolutely no money at all. Like making money here and then losing it over here. And then I accidentally got into an apartment building, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was 2011. It was a nightmare. And then after about 12 months, it kind of stabilized and it got super boring. But it was sending me like $1,500 a month. I was like, daggone it, I should do more of that and less of this. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off a little bit. And man, I mean, my journey to financial freedom took like 9 years, and it was all, I lost a lot of money and a lot of gray hair out of it. And so when I sat down and I started blogging about real estate and about apartment buildings, I kind of developed this mission, which is financial freedom with real estate. How do you do it? I try to answer that question, and I've wholesaled, I've lease optioned, I've landlorded, and I've flipped houses, and none of those things really got me to the end goal, except this apartment building But the problem with apartment buildings is it's considered kind of an advanced strategy that requires a lot of money and a lot of experience. And now in hindsight, I know that none of those things are true. So our entire platform is, hey, you want financial freedom with real estate? Well, I'm gonna show you how to do it, but it's not gonna involve single family houses. You know, and it's not, this is why when we did this book, it has nothing about apartments in the title, because if I put apartments in the title, no one's gonna read the damn book. And so we talk about that shift from single family house investing to apartments, and that you don't need experience, and you don't need $1 million in the bank. And so that's our entire mission. That's what's behind the cape.
I love it. I love it. So, but talk to me when I say behind the cape, and that makes it even more exciting to get into this, because it is a hot topic. And I think it's something that a lot of people would think is advanced, but that was where they like to scale into is apartment, right? A lot of people love to skip single families, but it feels like it's too hard. But before we get into all of that, talk to me about, though, for me, a lot of my audience, they follow me, they listen to me because of my story. So when I say talk to me about who is Michael Blank though, right? So what do I mean by that? I guess talk to me about what is the transformation that you had in life that gave you the thing that says, hey, I got to get into business in the beginning because you had the pizza shop, and then real estate. Like, talk to me about your upbringing. Did you come from entrepreneurship? Did you come from a family who understood real estate and business? What was that like of how you made that transition into being a business owner?
Yeah, none of those things. So I was not surrounded by entrepreneurs, and I was not surrounded by real estate. So when I had Rich Dad Poor Dad, it really hit me upside the head, because I'm like, passive income. It makes so much sense, but where has this been all my life? Like, the idea of passive income from real estate never occurred to me. I don't know why. I've been on a rock, I guess, for so many years. And so when I read that book, it really made my mission to pursue financial freedom. And I did it with a cash flow business that was misguided, and with real estate investing strategies that now in hindsight never would have gotten me quite to my goal. And that's really my journey. I thought I had it solved, didn't have it solved, lost everything, and then kind of discovered it through that process. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, because a lot of people think they need to flip a house or use the BRRRR method or buy crypto or whatever, right? And I never thought through where it's going to end. Like, they talk about the ladder of success. You're climbing up the ladder of success, or whatever you think your ladder of success is. Then after many years and hard work, you're at the top. You're like, yes, I made it. And then you realize that the ladder is up against the wrong wall. And that's exactly what happened to me. I see a lot of people do that. They lose years pursuing a strategy that's not going to actually give them what they wanted initially. That's what happened to me.
So, all right, now we're back into it, and let's talk about why apartment buildings first off, because for a lot of people, they say, hey, you know what, I would love that cash flow, but at the same time, it takes longer is what it feels like. The cycle takes longer, whereas if I flip a house, I could probably get that money a lot sooner. I don't need to manage as many tenants. Why do you say apartment buildings is the way to financial freedom?
Well, let's talk about why other things are not, before we get to the solution, right? The problem is, pick your favorite real estate strategy, and I'll maybe pick some holes in it.
Okay, so let's go BRRRR method.
BRRRR method. Okay, BRRRR method. Great. The BRRRR method is much better than the flipping or wholesaling, right? Because in flipping, if you're not buying, fixing, and selling, then the money stops. You're not making money. And worse, once you sell it, there's no residual income. So that's the worst, but it's by far the most exciting, kind of like investing in crypto. So it's the most exciting of the elements. The less exciting and the better is if you buy and hold, right? So you buy something, you buy a house, you get some cash flow, you fix it up a little bit. Instead of flipping it, you then refinance it, and then you do it again. Now, that's not a bad plan. You could do one of these maybe a year, and then in 5 to 10 years, you can have 10 of these properties, and then you can probably cover some of your living expenses. Now, if you're a high-income earner, you're going to have to do a lot of BRRRRs to get the $10,000 a month. Like, you got $200 a month in a house, which is hard to get in most parts of the country, right? I need 50 of those suckers. I need to BRRRR 50 houses to get the 10 grand a month. I did the math on this, and I'm like, holy smokes, I'm not doing that, right? So if you're trying to cover $3,000 a month, you can probably BRRRR yourself there in about five years. The problem is scale. You talk to anyone who has become financially free with real estate, and I interview them on my podcast. It's called Financial Free with Real Estate. I also understand how people become financially free. And in many cases, people start with single family house investing and then realize they can't get there. They can't scale fast enough. And that's when they kind of scratch their head going, well, shoot, how am I going to get there? And they don't know. Oh, there's apartment buildings or commercial real estate. I heard about that, but that's so far in the future. I need so much money, so much experience, and they dismiss it as a strategy. And we teach people you don't need any real estate experience at all. And people are doing their first apartment building deal without any previous real estate experience. It's a complete myth.
So let's talk about that. How would, if somebody's coming to you and they're brand new, let's say they have $1,000 that they can invest, right? But they want to get into apartment buildings. Are you telling them, hey, the best thing you can do is go find the deal? Are you telling them, hey, go find a real estate agent, right? Or a commercial broker that could help you with the apartments, and then you go find the money, and they'll find the deal? What's the best strategy that you always recommend?
What's
the first step?
Yeah, the first step is a mindset shift around your own resources. So you said it only has $1,000. Okay, that means, well, I don't have enough money. I don't even have money to buy a house. So it's the same thing. If you're going to burr a house, you're not going to do it with $1,000. You need some money for a down payment and maybe some repairs. Yes, you're going to get a loan, but $1,000 is probably not going to cut it. However, in an apartment syndication, $1,000 might cut it. There are people who have no money at all who are successful, and the mindset shift is that you are not limited by your own resources because you're losing other people's resources. And that was a big mindset shift. When I got into house flipping, I had my money deployed into restaurants, but I wanted to flip houses so bad. It was 2009 because there were so many foreclosures in the market at the time, and the retail market had recovered. And I was like, man, I can buy a house for 80 grand, put 30 in it, and sell it for 190. Like, how do I do it? How do I do it? And the answer is with other people's money. And so it's the same thing with apartments. If you grasp the idea that you can raise money from someone to do something else with, which is what a syndication really is. I mean, I can syndicate anything. In this case, apartment building. I can syndicate a single family house too. That's kind of what we did with the rentals. My BRRRR method is similar. If you use hard money, it's kind of like it's a loan, but you're really using other people's money. So you're just doing that and the thing is, that's the mindset shift. If imagine investors have a problem. The problem that the investors have that invest in the stock market, the problem they have is the stock market. And it's volatile, unpredictable, okay, as we've seen recently. Number two, it doesn't produce cash flow like real estate does. So they can't use it as an exit strategy unless, they have a lot of money in their portfolio and they live off 4%, which no one ever does. And number three, they pay too many taxes. And so you, as a real estate syndicator, can help them with all three of those because real estate syndications in general appreciate much faster, more consistently. So I can do more reliable planning. Number two, I get cash flow. And number three, I pay either no taxes or significantly less taxes. So all you have to do is have a conversation with a stock market investor and go, hey, how's the stock market treating you? And they're like, well, let me tell you. Well, I say, here's what I've been doing. And some of my closest friends. And now they're interested. They're like, what? Syndication, is that legal? Right? Now they're starting asking questions around that. And so what most people in the beginning, they're like, I can't see myself raising money. That's ridiculous. What they find after they learn how to raise money is that it's actually the easier part of the business. It's actually surprisingly easy for the reasons I just mentioned. And if you get one person to say, oh my gosh, well, you find me an apartment building deal or a duplex or whatever, I might be interested in $50,000. And you're like, really? And they're like, well, I got one dumb enough to want to invest me. Maybe I can do it again. Now imagine having 5 dumb people agree to invest $50,000 in your deal. Now you got $250,000 behind you. Well, could you buy $1 million apartment building? Well, you could, right? And many people do. And so it's the same thing but different. Now in a BRRRR method, I have to do one at a time. What happens with apartment buildings, even if let's say you buy a duplex, let's say you BRRRR a duplex, but your long-term mindset is, I want to scale a multifamily portfolio. When you approach it that way, the first deal might be a duplex. The second deal is going to be 10 units. And the third deal is going to be 25 units, and the fourth deal is going to be 50 plus. It always happens. I wrote my entire book around it. It's called The Law of the First Deal. Because your comfort zone expands, you become a deal magnet and a money magnet, and you're not going to go back and do another duplex. No, that's too easy. It's too boring. So you're going to do a 10 unit. And so within 3 deals, most people are able to quit their jobs. In fact, most of them do it after their first deal because of the acquisition fees you pay at closing, right? You said, oh, flipping houses I get paid in 6 months. With apartment buildings, you get paid at closing when you buy it, not even when you sell it. You get paid 3% of your purchase price when you buy it. You can't even do that with a house flip.
I love it. I love it. So talk to me where I think a lot of people get nervous though. And it's funny because I am that guy who I started out with single family, and I actually started out with the Burr method. That's why it still is my favorite. And now I do own commercial real estate. But yeah, and so I am that guy. But talk to me about in the beginning where a lot of people get nervous at is they don't know what to say, because you made the conversation seem so easy of like, hey, well, here's what I'm doing, me and my buddies. But for somebody that's listening at this and they're saying, okay, but I don't know, how do I know what type of return I can tell them to get? I don't know how to underwrite a deal. I don't know any of these things. So I'm brand new. What's that initial conversation so someone doesn't think that I'm crazy, especially if I don't come from the background of real estate and I'm trying to get somebody who knows that who I am, so I have credibility, but not real estate credibility with them?
Yeah, I got it. Now you're asking me a tactical question, and I will answer the tactical question, but I can answer 10 of your tactical questions and you're still not going to take action, right? So in other words, there's got to be a mindset shift around, can I do this? Can I raise money? Can I appear more experienced than I am? Can I do this without a track record? Right? Those are your biggest objections. If you feel that you can overcome those two in some way, then you can answer those other questions. So you still got to deal with those first, because I can answer this particular question. You're going to come up with another 5 questions right afterwards, and you're still going to say, well, you know what? We never resolved the other 2 questions, so I'm just going to keep, listening to podcasts. I'll answer the question though. In general, you don't really raise money. Okay, you're not going out there to raise money. What you're doing is you're being intentional with your conversations, and you're sharing your enthusiasm. Here's what I mean, and this is all with a little bit of education. The thing I'm sharing here right now, but so the first one is that you're not going out to raise money. You're just being intentional. So you're at the ball game with a bunch of other dads, and what do you guys talk about? Talk about sports, the weather, politics, stupid stuff, right? Well, okay, right. Don't do that. Don't waste 10 minutes of your life talking about stupid stuff. Do a 60-second segue and go, hey man, you're not gonna believe it. Or you might ask the question. Here's a good one. You might ask the question, by the way, I'm just curious, what do you invest your money in? All right. All of a sudden the conversation shifts to investing. Okay, now you're already in the ballpark. And now you can ask some questions and you can say, well, you're not gonna believe what I'm doing. I'm getting in this apartment building stuff. Like, it's crazy. I got a coach, and I got like 3 investors behind me, and I'm gonna visit a property tomorrow, and they're like, what? You're doing what? Now the conversation is simply, you asking some questions and then you sharing your enthusiasm. That's it. That's raising capital. And this is just an example of many different things, because you're gonna ask me questions, well, how do you analyze deals? How do you find the market? All this stuff, you can learn with, a course or a mentor or something like that. The biggest thing I find is that people are hung up on the fact that they don't have 10 houses in their portfolio. They haven't done this for more than 5 years. They don't have $250,000 in the bank. And in their mind, that has to happen before they can even contemplate this. So I'm just here to tell you that you don't need any kind of experience. You can overcome your lack of experience with just a little bit training, a little bit of training, and some knowledge, and people overcome it all the time.
I love it. That's so funny, because that's exactly what people do, right? They just, right when you answer those first 2 or 3 tactic questions, they go right into the other ones, and then at the end of it, you see them 3 months later, and they still haven't taken action on one thing.
At one point, you have to invest in yourself. Pick any strategy, the Burr method, being a real estate broker. Come on. Now, you can listen and read books all day long, but at one point you can say, okay, are you going to do this or not? Because if you are, you have to spend that $1,000 that you talked about. You got to spend it on yourself. Because I don't have 30 minutes to explain to you the entirety of becoming an awesome real estate broker. No, there's an entire seminar, possibly over a weekend, that you have to go to and get really good at this thing, and then probably maybe I need a coach or work with you on that thing. So at one point, you have to invest in yourself. But at first, but you're not going to do it if you don't believe. You don't believe you can do it. Like, if I can't believe I can do something, why would I ever take a step in that direction? It's pointless. So I'll just keep you busy by asking you a bunch of technical questions.
Facts. I love it. I love how direct you are with it. Some people, this is going to ruffle some feathers, but they're listening to it and they're thinking to themselves, that's a little bit of me. So let's go into the next point of, talk to me about how do you get your students, how do you get any of the people who work with you to take that first step, to take that action? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that do come to you that way. And so now you've given them a couple books. Maybe they've read the Dumb Purple book, and now they're saying, okay, I want to do it. But like, how do you get people over that hump? What's like the small one or two things you do to get the wheels just spinning for them?
I'll be honest with you, it's not easy. Right after they read the Dumb Purple book, they should read the Dumb Yellow book, which of course is 250 pages. And I got to say, it is not an easy process. I got to be honest with you. Most of the people that finally pull the trigger and start working with us, or someone like us, is after many moons of listening to podcasts and reading books often enough before they go, they're all kind of saying the same thing. Maybe I should do this. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to shortcut this, where it is that one little thing that I can communicate within 10 minutes or less. That way I can sell more programs. I would be delighted. But what is that thing? I don't know what that one thing is. The only thing we can do is we can share with you some ideas on how you can overcome your lack of experience with, for example, using a script when you talk to brokers, or how you build a team behind you so you're not talking about your lack of track record, but you're leveraging the track record of your property manager, for example. Right? Sharing small tactics like that where you see, oh gosh, there's something there. I see how I can overcome my lack of experience. Or I see I don't need $1 million in the bank, and I can see how I might be able to raise it, kind of in the role play we just did here. Or what's even more common is joint venturing with others. So people that come in have access to capital, right? So there are people who, maybe they're a medical doctor and they get the multifamily bug, and they have access to capital. What they don't have access to is deals. They don't really like spreadsheets. They don't like talking to brokers. They just want to play golf with their buddies and raise money. And so what happens is, now there's a guy with $1,000 who's a hustler and a deal finder, and they get together, and that's a joint venture. It happens all the time. And so you share some things like that with people. Hey, you know what? If you get in this thing, you learn how to find a deal, I can guarantee you're going to find someone who wants to partner with you to bring the capital that you lack. And so, sharing some of these things opens people's eyes. You have to have a bit of an open mind, because we've been so seasoned over so many decades. We've watched so much HGTV flip this house that we're so seasoned that real estate means this one thing, and that apartment buildings and commercial real estate in general is really for the big boys. And so it takes a lot of unseasoning.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Now, let me ask you, for all of the upsides that there are in commercial and multifamily, where do you see people, especially new investors, go wrong at? Because I'm sure there's a 90% who won't take action, or it takes a lot of time to get over the moon. But those are 10% that just goes out and they fly out like a bat out of hell, right? And then you're like, whoa, slow down. Right, you got to know this and this and this. So where do most people, new investors that you see, go wrong in that multifamily space?
I don't know if you go wrong. I mean, you mentioned the people that just kind of go be bad out of hell, and there's the other extreme who just have to analyze everything to death. They have to have everything planned out 100%. All the pieces have to be on the table, and of course they never are, as you know, as an entrepreneur. And right. So I would say both are not ideal, but if I were to pick, I'd pick the guy that's running out the door ready to do something. He's building the plane as it, in the air. Like, those people are going to be more successful than the other person. The other person has to overcome a lot of limiting beliefs and mindsets. The other guy, yes, okay, all they need is a little bit of knowledge, and someone needs to throttle them a little bit. And yes, they'll make mistakes, but it's not going to stop them from that. And I'm a little bit like that. I'm more of an action taker. I'm also analytical. But like the first apartment building deal I did, I didn't have a mentor. I took like a class in 2006. It wasn't much of a class, right? And I was like, I'm a smart guy. I can figure this out. And I got into the apartment thing, and I had a professional tenant in there. You know what that is, a professional tenant?
No, they've been doing this long enough time that they know.
Yeah.
They know all the tricks of the trade.
They do, that's right, and they haven't paid rent for years, and they're not going to start with you either. And so that guy was a real problem. And again, I had no backup, no support. It was just all me floundering
You
around.
didn't at least have a property manager or anything?
Oh yeah. But he was on the wrong race, and he had no idea what he's doing. Okay, I mean,
Gotcha.
it was awful. Anyway, so it took me a while to fire this property manager and get one that's actually familiar with Section 8 housing. For example, this was Section 8 housing, and it was like lights out, right? And so these are all things that, in hindsight, and at the time, I did have the money, right? It's not like I didn't have the money to invest in my education. I was a bit arrogant. I was like, I don't need this. I'll figure it out. I'm a house flipper, I'll figure this thing out. But anyone who's been doing this for more than once would have said, hey, Michael, your property manager is probably not the right fit. Or, by the way, you probably shouldn't buy that house in the first place, And so, I'd say I have always underestimated advisors and mentors and coaches. I no longer do that, but back in the day, I was like, I don't need these people. And so you asked that $1,000. I think if you have only $1,000, where should you invest it? The answer to that question is in yourself. You will always get the highest return on your investment when you invest in yourself. Every single time I've done it, it's always 10x. Always 10. Every time I didn't do it, it always bit me in the butt.
Right. Facts. How many apartment units, how many doors do you have now?
We have about 2,000, it's about $300 million of real estate, and we've sold off about, I don't know, maybe 500 units. We're selling currently a couple buildings right now. We're financing one.
And how much did you start? I guess when you first started, your first deal was how many doors?
It was a 12-unit building. It was in Northeast Washington, D.C., where I'm originally from, Northern Virginia. So it was, and I flipped houses in the D.C. area, so it was in downtown. Awful place to buy, by the way, because of the landlord-tenant laws. So, of course, another thing I didn't know. So, you want to be careful in places like New York and California that are very pro-tenant and therefore very anti-landlord. Very difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And so 12 units you started with. How long has it taken you to acquire the 2,000 now?
Yeah, so that was in 2011, and I was extricating myself. Well, I wasn't really actively looking for apartments until probably 2017. So I'm flipping houses. I get into an apartment building, but really the headline is I'm trying to get out of the restaurants, right? And so that took way longer. Okay, so I built one of these things for $300,000 back when I had my IPO millions, and I sold it for $25,000 cash. Okay, I have to tell you what, and after having lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. So the extrication of selling restaurants that are losing money is very difficult. And that's also when I started building when I started blogging around apartments as well. So we didn't really get into our second deal until 2017. But once we got into that, once I decided that this is something I got out of the restaurants, thankfully, and that gave me the energy to focus on something else. So it's really been since 2017. And if you study people who get into multifamily industry, it is a very rapid ramp up. For the reasons I mentioned, they get progressively larger. And so this is why only in 5 short years we've had 2,500 units. But people even within a year can have 100 to 150 units, 2 or 3 deals. Very common. Yeah, I mean, like our first student, their first deal is right around 50 units, I'd say, and most people coming into any program are like, yeah, you know what, 10 is good for me. But by the time we're done with them, they're doing more like 50 to 70 unit deals. It's amazing. It's amazing how you can bend your mind on stuff. Like, for example, let's say your comfort zone is a duplex, okay? And I'm telling Casanova, you gotta expand your mind, man. You gotta get rid of your limiting beliefs. You're like, yeah, but duplex is fine with me. I said, how about this? Why don't you tour a 15 unit? Call a broker and tour a 15 to 20 unit apartment building. And just do that. Do that once, and spend a couple hours touring, having lunch, maybe talking to a property manager. I will guarantee you that your comfort zone is no longer 2. After that is probably at least 5 or possibly 10. You do it again and it gets bigger. It's amazing what happens to your comfort zone when you expose yourself to the next level. You're like, oh, that's not so bad. It's not so scary. I can maybe do that. Maybe if I have the right support.
Yeah, no, for sure. What's the saying? It's like a mind that has been expanded can no longer contract back to its original state.
It's like
right?
inflation. Exactly.
Oh, it's yeah, absolutely, and I'm very much excited. That's one of the reasons why we're now, down here in Dallas. I'm very very excited to be able to talk to a lot of more apartment building owners and commercial owners, and yeah, I mean, bigger's, in my opinion, bigger's always better, but that's obviously perspective. But one of the questions that I have for you then is, so as you get into the bigger deals, let me ask, what are is there any type of a level that you now got to watch out for? So once you get, past that 50 units, now you're looking for 150 units. Is there anything that then you say, hey, you still got to watch out for this, because now this is a whole nother more money, more problems type situation?
Yeah, what happens is, after your first deal, you cross into what we call a deal maker professional. We have like different names for different stages, but you become a professional. And that is because when you do your first deal, you really believe it for reals. At this point, you're like, oh crap, I just did a deal. Maybe I got lucky, but I think I can do it again. And then your mind is more around scale. How can I do this again? And if you can do it again, then I can do it a third time. Wait a minute, now I'm going to start having a problem. In other words, when you do your first deal, it opens up this giant can of worms called building a business. And it's like, it starts off with one thing. It's like, yeah, you think you're a real estate investor, and you are, but when you reach a certain scale, you're really now more of just simply a business owner. And what the actual business underneath really is secondary. You're really just dealing with sales, marketing, and human beings at this point. And so it does shift to scaling. And most syndicators don't do that, because the way that we get into real estate in general is that it's always a side gig, right? It's always a side gig, it's all on the side. And then you have some success, and then that's when you have to start shifting over to scaling. So most syndicators, early ones, don't make that shift soon enough. And I was one of those as well. I mean, I'm like literally the crash test dummy of financial freedom. But what happens is you do a deal, you do another deal, you do a third deal, you do a fourth deal, all of a sudden the wheels come off, right? You're like, oh crap, things are breaking everywhere. I don't have enough people. I don't know about this. I don't have the right person on the team. And so no one really sits down and plans forward. So we're actually starting to teach that now, because we have enough people that have done a first deal and maybe quit their job. Is, oh gosh, if I were to do it over again, how would I create my scaling plan? Like, well, how much revenue could you make? It's a staggering amount. Most people don't even realize how much money they can make in syndications. Well, how are you going to invest it? Are you just going to buy beer with it, or are you going to do something? Like, should you maybe invest in marketing? Well, if so, how much, and what are you going to do, right? How are you going to invest in people? Which people should you bring on, in what order? Should you partner? Should you hire them? Are they 1099 or W-2? Like, all these questions that no one thinks about. So we're encouraging people to start thinking about that. So again, to fast track their journey. Mine not being apparently a fast track, as I figure everything else on the fly. But now going back and looking at our systems that we built over the years, how can we help someone shortcut some of their own learning experience?
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. And that's the same thing that I was talking to my wife about when we were talking about the daycare. So we own a couple daycare centers. And that was the same thing. I think in the beginning, you're trying to figure out these systems, these processes in your marketing. For a lot of businesses, that's where they struggle at, is in that marketing and that scaling side. And I think that would definitely be, because as you start to get, I think real estate has always not been sexy when it comes to the stock market or crypto, but once you get into multifamily, it does become sexy, right? When you can tell somebody that you own 100 units, now all of a sudden it's so sexy. But on the backside, what's underneath the hood, right? If you don't have the right property management, if you don't have the right team in place when things break, that's where a lot of people go wrong, but they're so much focused on the front end. So I love that you brought that part up, and how you're helping more investors get part of that part, or get past that part of the process. So no, this is definitely phenomenal. Let me ask, what's one thing that I should ask you that I maybe haven't yet? Because I have some things that are on my mind, but that's one thing that I want to know. What should I ask you but I haven't yet?
I think we covered the most important things, Casanova, and that's because you're asking questions around belief, right? You have a certain curiosity when you're interviewing someone, which I really like, and so you're asking a lot of things that basically come down to, can I do this? Could I do this? And I think those are the most fundamental questions to ask. A lot of times I'll do a webinar, and you have a Q&A at the end, and I discourage people from asking tactical questions for the same reason I just kind of told you about that, because it's not going to help them. you really have to develop a belief in anything. You want to be a great agent, or you want a BRRRR method, whatever, you have to develop a belief. So in other words, the tactic is not going to help you develop a belief unless it does, and then it's useful. And so I think we talked a lot about, having an open mind around this stuff and not just dismissing an idea. You hear an idea like, oh, that's not for me. It could be anything. It's like, for me, to some degree, it's like, well, what about ground up development? I'm like, it seems very risky to me. But the only reason I say that is because I don't know enough about it. I have to develop an open mind and maybe ask some curiosity questions to a ground up developer. And I bet you if I did that, they would probably address some of my limiting beliefs or even false beliefs I have about something. And so every time you do that, it opens up your world. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that people should take away from this stuff is, go listen to my podcast or read the Yellow Book, and then ask yourself, is that something, could I see myself possibly doing that? Yes, with the right tactics answered and the right level of support. And that's when transformation happens. So I think we're pretty thorough, man.
Yeah, I love it. So for anybody that's listening to you right now and they say, man, Michael, it seems like he has it all figured out. I know that he went through a couple bumps in the beginning, but it seems like now he has it all figured out and he's way past me. The way that I used to always phrase this question is I asked, if there was one thing that you could change, what would it be? But then people would always say, I wouldn't change anything because it made me who I am.
Oh, I would.
Right? That's what I always say.
That's such horse manure answer, man.
100%. And so
now,
I learned to phrase it. Well, I was going to say,
phrase it. What's a better
way.
Yeah.
So now I've learned to ask the way that says, if there was one thing that you wish that you would have implemented sooner to accelerate your path on your journey to your dream of where you are today, let me know, what would that one thing be?
That's good. Another way to ask that question is, what would you tell your younger self? How old are you? What would you tell yourself? Same thing. Because do you have any regrets? Well, no. I am a successful person. I don't have any regrets. It made me the person I am. Like, ridiculous. I would answer the same way, by the way, so the answer is, man, when I read that, first of all, I wish I would read that book when it came out. I think it came out in like 98 or something, or 99. I can't remember. Yeah. But I read it in 2005. Okay, so that's number one. And now I'm forcing my kids to read the book and play the cash flow game. And then number two, I wish I would have been able to give myself my Yellow Book now, because it's like the one thing is the idea, and the other one is kind of the implementation. And but in general, I would have hired an advisor earlier. Like, even when I got into the restaurant business, why would I get into the restaurant business without an advisor of some sort? Because now, fortunately, I found this advisor while the crap was hitting the fan, and he basically walked me off the ledge several times and kind of walked me through it. But man, that kind of guy would have probably talked me out of doing what I was doing, given his experience, right? And he would have asked me questions. Have you thought about this? Have you considered, personally signing a lease and what that could mean? No. What if things go badly? They won't. Have you studied maybe the average franchisee, not the top 1% of the references given to you by the franchisor? No. Why would I do that? Right? So stuff like that. I would have invested in an advisor or mentor or coach of some sort. And like I said before, every time I've not done it, it's kicked me in the butt. And I did it for the house flipping, by the way. Actually, I signed up with a wholesaling mentor. He didn't teach me the construction side, but he taught me, the marketing and the negotiation side. And, within 5 months, I had 2 deals because I had a freaking mentor. So I would have done all those things differently. So I would have done many different things differently.
Yeah, no, and I think that invest into yourself. That's the number one way that you can get a return, right? Because we all want some type of a return, but if you feel like that you've grown both mentally, hopefully financially as well, that's the best way for you to be able to really see a return on any investment. It's into yourself. So this has been a phenomenal conversation, my brother. I want to be the first one to say thank you, and if nobody else has told you today, I appreciate you. We're going to make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes, of course. But let me ask, for anybody who wants to stay directly connected with you, let us know, where can they find you at?
Yeah, we mentioned the podcast in the Yellow Book. They have exactly the same title, Financial Freedom with Real Estate. And we put up a link just for you. And it's called, at the Freedom Podcast /dream is where your listeners can find out both about the podcast and the book. So it's the Freedom Podcast /dream. That way I can track all your listeners coming to our website. But there you can get a link to the podcast, and you'll get a link to what we call our Freedom Vault. It's kind of our where we have all of our free resources, and then there's like our ebook on how to raise money, how to analyze deals, but there's also a secret soft copy version of this book in there, which we don't advertise, but if you go in there, you also can download a copy of that book, or you can buy it on Amazon for $10. Either way, it's all in the Freedom Podcast /Dream.
Love it. Love it. Well, there you have it. Again, I want to say thank you. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Remember, Dream Builder, just as he said, you have to take action. Believe first that you can achieve, but then you have to take action. Otherwise, that dream that you have, and we all have a dream, it'll only merely be a fantasy. That's all for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. That's all we got for this episode. Thank you for sticking around. That truly means a lot to me, and hopefully that means that we delivered massive value on this one. If you haven't already, the way that you could say thank you to myself and the team is just by heading over to iTunes and leaving a review and a rating. That's what iTunes loves to see. That's how we get out there even more, and I would definitely be grateful for it. I know the team would as well. Do me a favor and head on over to dreamnationpodcast.com. That's where you're going to be able to find all of the resources that we talked about in today's episode, as well as more exclusive content. And you'll also be able to sign up to our email list where we have more exclusive content. And we always love to hear the feedback from you all because you're our tribe. So remember, in the dream we trust, we'll see you on the flip side.